Affairs is called to order. Madam Secretary, please call.
Representative Bauman.
Present.
Representative Branscombe.
Here.
Representative Camuel.
Here.
Representative Decker. Representative Gooch.
Here.
Representative Herron.
Here.
Representative Hodgson.
Here.
Representative Imes.
Here.
Representative Cook. Here. Representative Lewis.
Here.
Representative Lockett. Representative Moser. Representative Raymond. Representative Callaway.
Here.
Representative Bratcher.
Here. Let's make sure our phone is off or on mute. And remember when you speak that you turn on the button so the green light will come on. Everybody can hear you. Is there any member on the committee that has any guests today?
Mr. Chairman, I'd just like to welcome all of our guests that are out here today. Appreciate them coming out for this meeting.
Thank you, Vice Chair. So we'll take up House Bill 809 first. And Representative Flannery. So introduce yourself at the table, and then the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. Patrick Flannery, State Representative for the 96th District.
Mr. Chairman, Eric Lykin, General Counsel for the House Majority.
I have before you today House Bill 809. It is a bill about original venue, not transfer of venue, but original venue for challenges to primarily constitutional amendments. The language also includes any challenge to a constitutional convention, which probably wouldn't happen that often, but I guess it obviously could, or statewide public question that would be submitted to the voters. It would require the filing of that within 30 days after the act becomes effective.
Motion on the bill.
We have a motion. And we have a motion for the bill for Representative Bauman and second by Representative Moser. Any discussions on the bill? Madam Representative Herron.
I've got a question. I know that we heard a similar bill like this previously. Can you just tell me what the differences is? I honestly, personally confused on the differences of the bill, what this bill is doing compared to the other.
Be glad to. I'm assuming you're referring to the bill yesterday in Judiciary. Okay. So the two primary differences, one, the bill 804, which you were in Judiciary yesterday, we heard that passed out of committee. That is about transfer of venue. So somewhat similar concept because it involves venue, but that's about transfer of venue on challenges to the constitutionality of an executive order, a statute that would be passed. I think it would also apply to cabinet orders. This is about original venue and applies to constitutional amendments primarily.
Can I have a follow-up,
Yes.
Chairman?
Yes.
So can you tell me about why Hardin County Circuit Court is specifically?
Yeah, I'll briefly explain that, and then I'll let Mr. Lykin go into more detail on that. But I guess in its simplest form, if you kind of look at the map, Hardin County is more or less the population center, easiest to get to from all portions of the state. So that's the thought on that, is if you kind of look at the population, it's close enough to Louisville, but close enough to Lexington, Golden Triangle, and it in many ways is kind of close to the population center. But I'll let Mr. Lykin address that more.
Yes, ma'am. So in some of the venue debates we've had in previous bills, been expressed by a lot of our legislators, particularly in the far western part of the state. It takes 4 hours to get to Frankfort, and perhaps that's not fair for everybody always to have to drive for Frankfort. So we started looking for the geographic center of the Commonwealth, and Taylor and Marion counties probably have the best claim to being the geographic center, but are not necessarily as accessible. So Hardin County is the closest, and you pretty much everybody in the Commonwealth can get there on 4-lane roads the entire way. So that being the closest to the geographic center that's most accessible. That's why Hardin County.
Representative Raymond.
Thank you. Hearing your all's explanation, I'm wondering if you think we ought to move the.
Well, I guess that would require a constitutional amendment, which I guess we could consider that. Well, I guess it's too late to file the bill, but maybe next time someone can.
I will say just for accuracy's sake, it actually wouldn't take a constitutional amendment. We can, with 2/3, I believe it is, of either chamber, move the seat of government with a bill.
So even lawyers learn stuff from other lawyers.
Okay, Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bauman,
Yes.
Representative Branscombe,
Yes.
Representative Callaway,
Yes.
Representative Camuel,
No.
Representative Decker, Representative Gooch,
Yes.
Representative Herron,
No.
Representative Hodgson, Representative Imes,
Yes.
Representative Cook,
Yes.
Representative Lewis,
Yes.
Representative Lockett, Representative Moser,
Yes.
Representative Raymond,
No.
Representative Bratcher.
Yes. And the bill passes with 10 votes yes, 3 votes no. Passes with favorable expression that same shall pass on the floor. Thank you, guys.
Thank you all.
Oh, Senator Howell, please. Senate Bill 143, please introduce yourself, and the floor is yours, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Jason Howell, 1st Senate District, and also, I believe, my first time before your committee, so I appreciate you having me. Committee members, appreciate you having me.
Glad to have you, Senator.
Senate Bill 143 is just a simple bill to correct some election clarity for our election system. Section 145 of the Constitution gives the rights for all U.S. citizens to vote in elections in the Commonwealth, but it doesn't expressly exclude non-citizens. This issue has come up in some municipalities in other states, excuse me, that have constitutional language very similar to ours.
We do have a motion on the bill by Vice Chair Callaway and seconded by Representative Bauman. Any discussions? Representative Herron.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Senator, for coming to our committee. I do have, we heard a similar version to this bill previously in the committee, but specifically with your bill, with dealing with Section 145, I know that when I've talked to my constituents, not just my constituents, but people across Kentucky, as it relates to voting rights and who can vote, I haven't heard many people talk about the issue of non-citizens, but what I have heard folks talk about is people with past felony convictions. And so I just wanted to hear you talk about more about if you're going to make changes to Section 145 of the Constitution, are you willing to talk about restoring voting rights to those with past felony convictions?
This bill doesn't deal with that. This bill deals with a constitutional, put in a constitutional amendment to change the Constitution to expressly exclude non-citizens. I know that there is a lot of discussion about restoration of voting rights. There have been a couple of bills floated out in each chamber that deal expressly with that, but this bill just deals directly with this small language change.
Thank you, and I appreciate that explanation. I think that for me, as a huge advocate in around voting, and I've lobbied the folks in this committee, and hopefully we'll have a bill heard soon. But I just think that if we are going to make any type of changes to our Constitution around voting, I know that Kentuckians have been fighting for over 20 years to make sure that we restore the voting rights. And I think that if we're going to mess with that section, we need to also look at the restoration. Thank you.
Thank you. Any further? Representative Raymond.
Thank you. Is this just like the House version of this bill that was passed out of committee and the full House floor a few weeks ago? Do you know?
I'm sorry, I'm not familiar with the House version of this bill.
Isn't it, Mr. Chairman? Just like
Yes.
the House version?
Yes.
After 6 years here,
Sorry.
I still don't understand why, when there's companion bills, one move House if we're going to carry your bill.
That allows us to be doubly confusing rather than singularly confusing, I
Thank
believe
you.
is the answer
Thank
to
you
your
very much.
question.
Okay, any further discussion? Secretary, please call the roll.
Representative Bauman,
Yes.
Representative Branscombe,
Yes.
Representative Callaway,
Yes.
Representative Camuel,
No.
Representative Decker, Representative Gooch,
Yes.
Representative Herron,
I'm going to pass today and hope that we can continue talking the conversation about restoring rights to those who've lost them due to felony convictions.
Representative Hodgson,
Aye.
Representative Imes,
Yes.
She said yes.
Representative Cook, Representative Lewis,
Yes.
Representative Lockett, Representative Moser,
Yes.
Representative Raymond,
Pass.
Pass.
Representative Bratcher.
Yes. 10 yeses, 1 no, and 3 passes. 2 passes, I'm sorry. The Senate Bill 143 passes committee with favorable expression. Thank you, Senator.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Now, Senator Bledsoe. I'm saying that right? Yeah, of course, yeah. Discussion only on her Senate Bill 131. Please introduce yourself, Senator, and the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chairman. I'm Amanda Mays Bledsoe, State Senator for District 12. And I'm here to talk to you about Senate Bill 131 for discussion and conversation. And we have something in common. Each of us have been subjected to campaigning. We've run political ads through TV, radio, mailers, or the internet, and it's important for us to get our message out to voters who represent, positions that we care about, issues we care about, and who we are. It's the beginning of a relationship built off trust with the voters. When the voter sees my ad, hears my voice, they should know that it's actually me. Borderline deceptive or manipulative campaigning has been around for decades. Some even call it shallow fakes. Photoshop pictures or taking words out of context or in part, not the whole of a stance on an issue, but for the first time, the technology exists for it to be so easy and so quick, for an ad to be so realistic that the line between what is true and what is false can be blurred altogether gone. Hence the need for deepfake legislation. Just last month, there was a robocall which sounded just like President Biden telling everybody not to go to the polls in New Hampshire. Unfortunately, this is just the beginning, as the technology is easier to acquire and there's little legislation governing its use specifically in elections. A handful of states have passed legislation last year, but more than 30 have introduced bills in 2024, specifically on deepfake in elections. Ideally, we need federal legislation, but in the meantime, states are taking actions to be proactive and provide some level of accountability in the campaigning process. So this legislation is designed to protect free speech, while maintaining efforts to hold those accountable who are actively working to alter the course and the outcome of the election. So first, this legislation defines what is electioneering communication as reflected in KRS, including the window that's enforceable 30 days before the primary and 60 before the general. Second, it defines synthetic media to be an image, audio recording, or video recording of an identifiable natural individual's appearance, action, or speech that has been intentionally manipulated with the use of generic adversarial network techniques or other digital technology, in a manner to create a realistic but false image, audio, or video that produces something that did not actually happen in reality, or something that was fundamentally false. Third, it goes through how that might happen in electioneering. You may bring injunction, you could bring challenges, you can have an affirmative action to include a disclosure. And finally, it shows the burden of proof is on not the medium of how it's displayed, but actually the sponsor. You might be asking why an elections bill and not an overall bill on deepfake. Well, here's why. As state reps, you know that the Supreme Court has set a very high expectation on the burden of proof on elected officials far above the normal citizen. The language in this bill mirrors the standards set in a familiar case to some of us, Alvarado versus Palmer, which states that in a defamation claim involving a public figure, they must prove that it was false by clear and convincing evidence, and that it was made with the knowledge that it was false or with reckless disregard for whether it was false or not. Technology is changing at a rapid pace. Those in the industry recognize this is a first step in legislation that will likely change or be modified to adapt to the ever-changing environment, but it's a crucial first step, ensuring that we protect the integrity of the election process. I recognize this was a bipartisan bill in the Senate and passed unanimously off our floor, and I'm certainly open to your thoughts and reasonable questions or input.
Thank you, Senator. You know, I know that when I got into political campaigns that the threshold is very low to have, but basically your opponents can say almost just about anything they want, and you really have no standing because you're in the public arena. If it was a private citizen, there'd be a whole different standard. But I appreciate this bill, and we'll give questions. Representative Branscombe.
Thank you, Chairman and Senator. Thank you for bringing this legislation. You and I have spoken on this many times, and you're exactly right. This is an issue that it's not going to go away. The feds seem to be, we'll say, dragging their feet a little bit on some federal legislation regarding the deep fakes, and I just want to say I appreciate you getting this legislation together. I think it's much needed. And I think it's something that, as time goes, we're going to have to continue to update and to look at. So thank you very much for this.
Let me ask you this real quick. Are you familiar with John Hodgson's bill?
I am familiar.
Okay. And you guys are like talking or have discussions?
We have.
Okay.
I think his House Bill 45 is a much broader on deep fake. More so than this bill. This is very narrow, specifically to elections and campaigning, which was intentional on my part. As the conversation and issues around deepfake largely is pretty new to the conversation. I do think it's different since we are public officials and held to a different standard than the general deepfake issues, which he presents in House Bill 45.
We have a couple more questions from folks, but can you give me a good example of what your bill would prevent? Is there any way you can give a scenario?
Sure, I'll pick one. Let's pretend that I have been openly against violence on animals and against dogs, for instance, and someone takes a picture of me and auto puts into AI, and all of a sudden they're running an ad of me going into the Humane Society, wreaking havoc, doing something that I would not do, is that I haven't done, and they run it. And they run it before someone has a chance to refute it, to provide a counterbalance to it, and people believe that it's true. Sounds like me, looks like me, and if there's no disclosure on it, and media is running it close to the election, I don't have time to prevent anything out. And that's the concern, is that when you're seeing something or receiving a phone call that sounds like the president, and you believe it to be true, and they're altering the course of the election and the output, that's the concern. We do things all the time on shallow fake. You take something out of context, for instance, on an ad. People do it on both sides. That's kind of, it's what happens. It was true. Someone said it. This is a complete falsehood. And that's the concern. That's what the bill would do, is prevent that and allow you some injunction to prevent it moving forward.
It would prevent it how? I mean, it would say it's banned, or would it have to have a disclaimer?
You'd have to have a disclaimer. And that's been something we've worked on with all the medias to go through to make sure it's consistent as states are doing this kind of around us, A. And then B, it provides some injunction relief to this person who's sponsoring the bill. And that is part of that would hopefully hold everyone to a higher standard, that there's an injunction part of this. The court could take damages, and that's an important piece of the accountability.
Representative Camuel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you for bringing this bill, and I know it's for discussion purposes only. And I have a question that it's just clarification. If we're going to, would we be in discussing this bill? Synthetic media and deep fakes, are those words used interchangeably?
Yes.
There's not a difference between the two?
Synthetic media is very particular in definition. Deep fake is kind of like the general term.
Thank you. That's what I was wondering. Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Co-Chair Callaway, Vice Chair Callaway.
Thank you for bringing this bill. It's always interesting seeing as things change, and I think some of the best parts, because politics is so boring, some of this stuff that comes out and all those things that people use to attack and whatever the case may be, definitely people look at that, they see that. So what is the argument? What would be an argument against actually doing this? Or is there opposition out there? Have you heard any opposition? And what would that argument be if there was?
I haven't. In fact, I've heard from a number of groups on both sides of the aisle, and a lot of partisan groups who have said it's important. Because if people stop trusting what they're seeing, it makes all of us at risk. And so there's been a lot of buy-in on both sides.
Good deal. Thank you.
Thank you, Senator. We still have a few days left, and we'll see how this progresses. And I think it's a timely issue.
Thank you very much. I appreciate it.
Thank you for coming. All right.